Okay, welcome back to the Arcadian podcast. It's episode number 16, and today is Monday, May 13th, 2019. I am Matt Franceschi, and joining me today are Adam Wolf, Ben Bachman, and Dave Mead. Trending news today, we're going to talk about a senator from Missouri is planning to introduce a bill to ban loot boxes and pay-to-win microtransactions. It's called the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act. Apex Legends has released data that shows they have banned 770,000 cheaters since the game came out. A brand new report has come out from a company called Newzoo that shows female gamers make up 46% of the total market, putting their total number at over 1 billion. But really, this conversation, I want to talk about the industry classing gamers, like mobile gamers and like hardcore PC gamers in the same category, and whether or not we think that they should be doing this or whether this should be separated out. And then we're going to wrap up with the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer that was just shown this week. But main topic today, we're actually going to be talking all about bosses. So most video games have a boss or set of bosses that you're working up to defeating for the majority of the game. Pretty much any game that you're going to play. I was putting this list together. I was having trouble actually finding or thinking about a game that didn't have some sort of boss concept or like stages set up for you to overcome like throughout the game to proceed forward. You rarely get to play as the boss though, or view the game from the boss's perspective, but from my point of view, I think that some of the boss designs and boss personalities are extremely well made and sometimes can even outshadow or overshadow the playable character or the protagonist of the game itself. So really, I thought we could just start off by talking about some of the bosses or boss fights or, even boss themes or boss tropes that are the most memorable for us, just from games that we've played.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to say right off the bat, which seems to be a reoccurring theme in video games, is the progression of the antagonist. Initially you'll see the antagonist in the beginning of the game. When and most of the time you don't even know that he is the villain or whatever, and through you may fight off against him earlier and he's like a weaker version of himself. So it's mostly in RPGs that I see this, but like as you progress through the story, you'll continually meet the opposing person, and like sometimes they'll blow you out of the water, like it's part of the game, like you're meant to die. There's those boss battles where like you're meant to die, like you get knocked down, but like it's part of the story, like shows your progression throughout the game and whatnot. So that's one thing with bosses that I see, especially in RPGs, is like the different forms that they take throughout the game, or sometimes like it's usually the final boss battle where like, I'll use like Sephiroth, for example, like he has like multiple forms in the final battle, and Kafka, has in Final Fantasy VI, Ultros. I'm using all Final Fantasy. Ultros in Final Fantasy VI has, each time you fight him, and that's a funny ass. I know Wolf knows about Ultros. He's a funny ass character.
Mm-hmm. What's his deal?
He's an octopus, and like the first time you fight him, like you have to have fire, use fire spells on him. That's his weakness, and like he says something funny when you hit him with fire. I forget exactly
something
what he says.
Like about like soup, making soup or something like that when you hit him with fire.
Yeah, he's like, "You're gonna make me a seafood soup or something." There's no voice acting. That's what he would sound like.
Make me a pizza.
Making me an octopi soup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's one of the main things, especially with RPGs, and I know it's in different genres too. You fight them early, and then him later in the game. It's cool. I think that why they do that is because they want to give you a feeling of progress, and they want that comparison, that side by side comparison, where like your main character that you're following through their story is getting stronger and learning and et cetera through their story.
Yeah, I think
without that it would be hard to show the progression.
No, those are great points. You actually triggered my memory on two different points that happen actually in Sekiro, which is like the fighting the same boss over and over, but also like the fight at the beginning where like you're forced to die even if you win the fight. That game opens up with like a really actually beautiful cutscene where you're in a field of like white flowers with like a full moon behind you, and you have to fight Genichiro is the boss. And no matter whether you win or lose, which most people are going to lose, it's like an impossible fight, but only the best people can win it. He ends up cutting your arm off because you losing your arm is like a main point of the game. You have to have like your grappling hook and your prosthetic tools to go through the game. But you also fight Genichiro again on top of a tower where like you're a lot stronger, and it's still a hard fight, but like you feel a lot stronger when you fight him the second time, and then you fight him again like way near the end of the game. Spoilers if nobody got there yet, but I feel like it's been out for a while, so screw it. And like the last time you fight him, it's very simple. At least from my perspective, it was it was like the easiest fight of the game. He's doing like the same move set, and you're like just a beast at that point. Like you're almost like more of a boss than he is. Like he's kind of like trying to beat you, I feel like.
That's a pretty cool concept. I don't know if I've ever played something similar to that where like that last boss kind of feels weaker than you at some point in time.
There's a boss after him that's really, really strong, but he's like the first one that you see and fight. So like he actually like appears to be the last boss.
Yeah. So obviously like a story of revenge there too, a little bit, right? You got your arm.
Absolutely, yeah.
You get him.
Oh yeah, you get him pretty good.
that kind of like that trope Ben was talking about, it's kind of like played out a lot in RPGs. You kind of gauge yourself against the villain periodically throughout the story, and kind of like a different twist to that. A game that I really liked, and they're actually making a new one coming out here shortly, that a Star Wars RPG, but a throwback to like Knights of the Old Republic 2, where big spoilers here, but this game's been out for forever, longer than Sekiro even, but the actual true final boss is kind of like what is one of your party members that is a little mysterious, kind of betrays you at the end. You really don't have any inclination that it's really coming either. It was kind of like a cool concept, like you get to the end and all of a sudden like literally your first party member with you in that game ends up being like a Sith Lord, and like had taught one of the other Sith Lords that you thought was the main villain of the game, when it turns out like she's been with you the entire time, like knows everything about you, that kind of thing.
Is that the game? I mean, excuse my ignorance here, I've never played it. But is that the game where aren't you like some sort of like Sith Lord yourself, or Jedi or something? Or is that a different game?
You can choose.
Right. You do have the option to choose in that, but you're kind of like in this moral gray area as far as being like a Jedi or a Sith. Your story in that, I want to believe that you decide along with like one of your, I don't think they have like a master apprentice relationship. They're more like friends to fight in a war, like against like the Jedi's wishes, but to like save a planet. Yeah. So like you're kind of in this moral gray area. Like some people view you in those actions as inappropriate and not what you should have been doing at that time, and you think you're more righteous, and you kind of decide for yourself like how you see you see your actions throughout the story.
That's very cool. Well, that's very cool that they can even do that. Yeah.
Right. That was a game, one of the many games where the basement, I call them the basement games, where me and Wolf, I watched Wolf.
The basement games.
Well, because we would either be in Wolf's basement,
like American Gladiator or something.
Dude, it was either we were in Wolf's basement or we were in my basement playing fucking video games all the time.
This is true. These are facts.
And
it is known.
I remember watching that. I think how it went, correct me if I'm wrong, like if you went the Sith route, you were more like by yourself. You didn't have the aid of the Jedi and whatnot, but you got some like powerful moves and shit. But if you went the Jedi route, like you had them and part of the story, like it was like Sith solo, but there was other people to the story. But if you went Jedi, like you always had them and like got items from them and different powers from them and shit.
Right. I think I might be, I don't want to confuse the two games because they are kind of a slightly similar story, but I'm pretty sure it's the second one where you're right. Like there is like a a Jedi council that's like kind of scattered around the universe, and whether you're good or bad, you're either out to unite everybody or you're like out to kill them. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
just kind of a cool turn of events.
I wish I would have played the games.
You still can. They're great games,
Well,
man.
I actually had downloaded one on Steam. I think it was the first one. But for whatever reason, there was like this bug that I like couldn't move my character like whenever I would do certain things. Like everything would like freeze up. I have to keep like saving and reloading the game to come back in, and 5 bouts of that happening, and that was it for me. Pair it with the bad graphics and stuff, I was out of there.
There's well, let's keep on the bosses here.
Yeah, sorry. Well, for me, I mean, we might as well just roll it out now because we have to get to it, even though we already did Sekiro. But I mean, you have to talk about FromSoft and Dark Souls and all of the Soulsborne games. I think if you didn't talk about it, like the community would probably have your head.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me the most memorable boss is obviously Ornstein and Smo. I think that a lot of players would probably say that same thing, but there's so many bosses that you could choose from within just the Dark Souls series or franchise, even back to Demon Souls. There's just just 10s, 20s of great boss fights. But Ornstein and Smo, like, it was so iconic, I think, because the game's already hard enough just getting there. And I think, like, you get to Anor Londo and it's this golden palace in the sky, which is very different from the rest of the theme of the game, right? It's like very I don't want to say like dull because there's a lot of color, but it's like very dreary, like very depressing the entire time. You finally get to Anor Londo and it's like the sun's shining and like everything's made of gold, and then you like feel like you finally made it, and then you get to Ornstein and Smo and they just pummel your ass for like hours and hours. Like, you feel like you're finally getting strong and they just put you back in your place. And it's one of the best gaming moments that I think that I've had, and I think a lot of people would say the same.
It's one of those oh shit moments, right? Like you're kind of anticipating. I mean, you fought a few bosses up until that point in time, but then you walk in there and it's not just one boss, it's like two. And you're like, what?
You're kind of feeling like you're like hot shit for a little while because like you've had some success and like the mechanics are down, like you've been winning some big fights, and then those two just totally hammer you. It's great. Right. Actually, literally, they hammer you into the ground. So
yeah.
I have no experience, but when I see Ornstein and Schmog, I just imagine like two like blacksmith like type characters that.
Well, Smo has like a huge hammer. So like he's like fat with a huge hammer, and Ornstein is a dragon slayer. He's got like really sick armor actually, but he has like a spear that he can shoot lightning from too. They're pretty cool.
My experience
all gold too.
My experience with those games, I got off from Quaylog.
Oh yeah, I remember that. You were playing for a while. You couldn't beat her, right?
Well, I mean, I tried like 5 times and uninstalled the game, but yeah, I wasn't a mage like some people.
Yeah, we're not going to name any names, sure, but
I wasn't a mage.
Yeah, you didn't read the guide.
I was like a thief with a shield and a fucking. And that fight's hard for a melee character. Like you have to like get under her and shit.
Well, Wolf, do you remember this? You might remember this. I'm sure you do. But playing Demon Souls back in college, and the Flame Lurker from it's the second stage, I think, that you get to in Demon Souls, and he's that like fire boss that's down in that pit.
Right.
Okay, toughest boss.
No, he really was. He was so aggressive, like compared to everything else that you had faced up until that point. Like you might have fought that slime boss,
the Phalanx,
that really didn't come after you. Flameworker was like up in your face, like lunging across like this huge map. But one of the cool things.
Go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
Oh,
you.
the mechanics of the fight itself. He was blind, wasn't he? Was that it?
He might have been. I don't know if he was like actually blind or just like
you could do something to your advantage. It's one of the moves or like a way you could manipulate like in the fight itself where he'd have a really hard time like locating you and he would just kind of swing wildly. I just remember that was a really, really neat aspect. Obviously, I don't know how you'd ever know that in the moment. It's not like anybody tells you, like, hey, this dude's blind.
No, it is.
There's
It
no
is
real.
Soulsborne. Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I think our character used to have magic to start built in, so like we would rely on that a lot to like kill the bigger enemies, and then with the failing, she'd have like the fire bombs too, so you could kind of like do a ton of damage from a little bit further away. But with Flame Lurker, it was just no getting away from them for the most part, unless you could like kind of cheese them out like that a little bit.
Right. I think we had the beginning of that game like down pat.
Yep. Beat the
Like the
Phalanx,
first-
get the purple flame shield, go down to the Flame Lurker so you could have heat resistant shield.
You guys were cheeseball and stuff before I came along. I thought
No,
that was special for us.
We were like cheeseball apprentices before we met you, and now like we're all masters.
Very cheesy now. Yeah. The big cheese.
Well, you got Zhuge Liang, you know. You're gonna get cheese sometimes. Sima Yi, Zhuge Liang.
Good point.
One thing that I want to go off and get a little bit, jump into the psychology of that. It seems like one of the things that I like about villains so much in these games, and that makes they really make the game. Because if you don't have that strong villain that's countering what your character, that's sometimes malevolent, but what I like about these games, and I have some examples, is the character who is really evil and you have to destroy, because if you don't, they're gonna destroy the world, or destroy your country, or whatever scenario, or kingdom, or whatever scenario you have. But the backstory, like, kind of it makes sense for why that they are this way. For instance, Sephiroth, and Wolf will know about this. And anyone who's listening who's played Final Fantasy VII, throughout, if you really are paying attention to the story, like, Sephiroth is kind of it's a tragic thing what's going on with him, because he's not really human, and he's throughout the story he's trying to figure out why he's different, and why he's being used in all these things, and you can relate with why he loses his shit. Another one's Luca Blight, one of the Suikoden 2 bosses, and he's like vicious, man. He's like, kill them all, fucking pigs, like that's one of his lines, like literally, like he's just like mowing people down.
Wow.
But his backstory is his mother, or his sister, got killed by this opposing kingdom, and his mother was raped in front of him, and like all this horrible shit happened to him. His whole village, or his I can't remember exactly, but either like the castle that they resided in or a village nearby was like burnt down, and he had to see like people get, women getting raped by these fucking soldiers and all this crazy shit. And like he's just reliving that, because that's one of a significant thing that happened to him. So like, yeah, these are, in a lot of these cases, these are horrible things that have happened to these people, and it's kind of understandable how they lose their shit. And I love that in the story, is when those characters that you can relate, you can really relate.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, a well-written villain, like a truly well-written villain, I think can like sometimes be like the greatest characters. But like someone like Thanos in the Avengers. Like, I was watching Infinity War, a little bit ago, like, months ago, but like I found myself like kind of rooting for Thanos throughout the movie, even though the Avengers like have a great cast as well. But he's so well written, he's so strong, and he just like knows what he wants, and like he's going to get it done, like to keep the world balanced versus like letting everything get overpopulated and like overrun. I think it's great.
Yeah.
They really did a great job.
Because on his home planet, that did happen. It did get overpopulated,
exactly,
and they all starved, or something like that. I'm not too privy on the story there, but I know that happened. But to juxtapose it a little bit here, then we have the unhinged evil with no, there's no background that's acceptable, right? An example of that is like Kefka. He's just a madman. He's like a mad gesture from Final Fantasy VI. I know I always go back to Kefka, but he's one of my favorite villains. He's just pure evil, and he's greedy for power. He wants to be the most powerful being, and he wants to destroy the earth, essentially. And there's no reason for it. He's just a madman. That's the other portion where like you can really get behind hating those motherfuckers, because there's no justification for. It's just pure malevolence and evil.
Right. You can definitely, I mean, I can agree with you. You can definitely hate that type of character, but I feel like, I don't know, some of the older Final Fantasies are definitely, suspect to it, having a villain with like a lack of motivation, I guess. I mean, a story, a purpose, like why they're there to do these things. Like that you brought up Sephiroth. He kind of, I don't know, he just sits in everybody's mind so easily, because obviously you look at him and, he's wearing like the black outfit and he's got the giant sword.
He's awesome.
Silver hair. He's just a very iconic character. Does he have the deepest story, like motivation? Maybe not compared to some stories, but you were right, Ben. Like that, like trying to come to terms with himself, like who he is and what he's even there to, to be doing. He's this guy that's essentially created from something else. Is he a man? Is he a god? Like, he finally ends up deciding that, he's a god, and, he's just going to end like everybody else's existence, which is, pretty doom and gloom. But Final Fantasy VII, I feel like, is one of those games. I don't want to get into it too much. I guess we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I feel like, it kind of suffers from like a lack of direction at times. Like, initially you were alluding to earlier, like you kind of see the villain and you keep going after him, like your pursuit of the villain throughout the game. Final Fantasy VII in specifics, like this villain is, the Shinra Corporation, right? Mm-hmm. Initially, you're essentially you're part of a terrorist group, like attacking this corporation to like try and save the world here, and then all of a sudden it just kind of shifts focus to this pseudo god character. It just kind of bugged me all the time.
Yeah,
not that he wasn't a well motivated character at times, but
well, he's in Kingdom Hearts 2. The Sephiroth boss fight is an optional fight that you don't have to do, but by far the hardest in the game. It's actually like an extremely difficult fight. It's a one-on-one fight. You can't bring Donald and Goofy. You have to fight on 1v1. There is one. I think that might be Kingdom Hearts 1.
In the Coliseum,
you fight him in the Coliseum.
Yeah, the Coliseum.
And then in 2, you fight him. I can't remember exactly where it is. I remember there's like blue mountains or like rocks around you, but I can't remember exactly where that is. But it's an extremely difficult fight. He's got like 10 health bars. It's wild.
10 health bars?
I'm telling you, yeah, it's nuts.
What I wanted to say when you were talking about the story for Final Fantasy VII, like you said, I don't want to get into it. We're about it a little bit. I just want to say the main thing that seemed, the feeling that I got first playthrough of that, I was very young, but I still got this feeling. It was just a major feeling of it, just ominous. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't really, like you said, there's not really any direction. You're just kind of like floating around. You're fighting Shinra in the beginning, but then you're just kind of like floating around and shit.
That's very true. Very true. Well, I mean, when you look at it, like really strong like bosses, villains in general, I think a game that I like to look to is like Warcraft, that world. With as far as like Arthas and the Lich King, I know that not at all points in time, but like Illidan, I know he showed up like Warcraft is like the Burning Crusades, like big baddie, but he kind of flipped back and forth all throughout like Warcraft's history.
Yeah, well, those villains are great. Like someone like Arthas that is like supposed to be like a very, very good character, and all of a sudden, like for whatever reason, gets turned to evil or to another perspective of things. I mean, however you want to look at it, like a Darth Vader character,
exactly,
are extremely well done.
that's the typical, and Dave can speak to this a bit. That's the typical thing that I always get with Warcraft is the characters. Like I don't feel like there's a lot of just straight up bad motivation characters. Like something happened to them, or they changed in some way. Like Sylvanas got turned into undead.
Yeah, I think
Arthas.
Illidan's probably the best example of that though,
Yep,
because
yep.
he's good, but he's bad because of how he, you know what I mean? He wants to do what's right, but he has maybe questionable ways of getting there and doing it.
Yep.
But then, like, I mean, in Legion, at the end of the day, he kind of like he did the right thing and like saved the day, if you will.
How does Sylvanas get turned? And is Sylvanas like bad, or is she kind of like a neutral character, or like a chaotic?
Well, she was like a high elf, and then Arthas killed her.
Oh, it was Arthas. Okay.
And then resurrected her as a Banshee Queen, but she was able to like break away from like his undead mind control.
She's like neutral undead.
Yeah, she was she joined the Horde, and then she was kind of just like there. And then like in the latest expansion BFA, she kind of like she's portrayed as evil because she does like fucked up shit, and like like uses like blight and plague to like for war purposes and shit, and like is okay with like killing her own people and stuff. And
well, she isn't a boss yet, right?
Not yet, but
you think it's coming?
They're saying that, I don't know. They're hinting that it's not going to be. It's not going to play out like Garrosh and how other bosses have played out in the past. But I don't know. We'll see.
If you beat a
really
boss,
interesting.
If you beat a boss in WoW, like a final boss, do they die in game, or does it?
It depends on the boss.
It's usually instanced.
Well,
like I mean, like as far as like the story, like you can go back and kill them repeatedly. But like sometimes, like as far as the story goes, like they are dead.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, cool. Okay, that's really cool.
Like Arthas, like whenever you fight him, which I mean, arguably is probably one of the like best WoW fights, because that was like the most iconic character, and you finally get to like take him down. But like that fight was cool because at the end, like once you get into like 10%, he like cast like Fury of Frostmourne or something, and it kills your whole raid. Everybody dies. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, so it's just like a race at that point, huh?
Yeah, he kills everybody. Like you all, like you get him to 10%, he just kills everybody. The whole raid's dead. You're all dead. He just killed you. So you're like, okay, fuck. And then he like, he's like talking shit about how like you guys were the greatest champions and I killed you anyway, blah blah blah. And then Tyrion Fordring, who's like the paladin dude with Ashbringer. He's like, him and Arthas like are yapping, and then he's talking shit, and then Tyrion like calls on the light, like give him strength for one last time, and then Tyrion like goes like light shoots out of him or whatever, and he goes like nuts, and he like jumps over the Lich King's head and like breaks Frostmourne, like shatters it, and then when he does that, like that's his sword, Arthas' sword.
Yeah.
You shatter the sword, and then like all the souls in the sword like fly out, like because whenever you kill somebody, the soul is like in the sword now.
Oh, that's really cool.
So like he breaks the sword, all the souls come out, including his dad, like the king that he killed. And then his dad is like, you know what I mean? Like it's over for you, my son, and then whatever. And then he resurrects everybody that he just killed, and then you go back and then you kill the Lich King and Arthas. And then like, you know what I mean? He dies, he loses it, like the helmet falls off and everything. And then there's like like there's a little like cutscene or whatever, like him talking to the dad and stuff. Then he dies, and then Bolvar like has to put on the Helm of Domination to like continue to control the undead. So he like sacrifices himself to like continue to control the Scourge. So they can't. They have to have a roller basically, or they just go like ape shit and kill everybody.
It sounds really well written.
But yeah, it was like WoW. I mean, now maybe not so well written, or like there's at least arguments about it not being as good as it used to be. But like back in the glory days, they really developed the characters really, really well.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And made them very iconic.
Yeah, Arthas kind of fits into that trope too, right? Like, same thing as Illidan, as you were saying, like that. Obviously, like when he goes to get Frostmourne, he needs this power. Maybe he was a little more corrupted, became evil, but like he kind of needed this power, and they were out there to find it in order to like.
Yeah, right. He
fighting
like
Arkham
had
at that time.
he like had good intentions, but or even like the calling of Strathhome, like whenever like the plague was spread through like the towns, he was like, we need to kill everybody that's infected, so they can't, you know what I mean, so they don't spread the plague. But like everybody's like, that's fucked up. You can't kill your own people, and he's like, we have to do it.
Yeah.
So like that was like
Burn
his
'em.
progression. Yeah. That
Yeah,
was his
yeah.
like
That's
progression.
I remember that from Warcraft 3.
Warcraft 3, yeah. When the
I
camp.
remember that. I remember his turning. Who was with him? Was it Jaina?
The dwarf was with him, I thought, when he grabbed
Muradin's there. Yeah, Muradin's
Uther?
there whenever.
when he grabs the sword, doesn't he like?
Yeah, when he gets Frostmourne, he's like they're in Northrend and he's with Muradin.
Yep.
I thought he
Muradin,
kills
okay.
him, but does he not?
He he doesn't like actually die. I don't think.
Okay, all right.
He
And then
just-
he's
he
with
just, like,
Jaina in
disappears.
Strathhome, right?
Yeah, Strathhome, he's with Jaina and Uther. They both make appearances, and they're like, "Don't do it, don't do it," and he's like,
Yeah,
"Fuck, I'm doing it anyway."
Which makes it like, I mean, really epic for that like final confrontation with him, that boss fight.
Yeah, it was like they really built. You know what I mean? By the time you actually fight him in Wrath of the Lich King expansion, like there was such like a huge character build up for him.
Yep.
That like made it really epic when you
People
finally.
were pumped for that fight, man. Because that's like you said, it took so long to actually fight Arthas. It never happened in Warcraft 3, and it took. It didn't happen in Vanilla. He wasn't even in Vanilla.
No.
And then what was this first expansion?
The Burning
Legion?
Crusade.
Burning Crusade.
Illidan was like the main baddie at that point in time.
Okay. And they really, I think the timing for that expansion was perfect because it didn't like piss people off that he wasn't there yet, but like it was a good balance to bring it at that time, I think.
Another character that has a similar arc to Arthas, I mean, not like super similar, but somebody that kind of gets corrupted, is Artorias from Dark Souls, who's actually, I think, my favorite character from at least the original game. In the regular game, you fight his pet wolf Sif, who I say pet, but he's like, like a million times bigger than you, and he's got that like huge sword. It's a really cool fight. But then you get like snippets of context about Artorias. You get his ring to go down into the abyss because he was like an abyss walker. But then in the DLC, you actually get to fight him, and he was a knight. I think he was one of Gwyn's 4 knights, but he goes into the abyss to stop the corruption from like hurting all of the people, and ends up saving Sif with his shield, and then he ends up getting corrupted himself with his greatsword. And whenever you go to fight him, his like left arm is all damaged, and he's like completely evil at that point. He's like a shell of his former self. I don't even think he can speak, but he kind of like just whoops your ass with just his one hand. But it's a really cool fight. I think one of the best characters in the Soul series, just because you get those context clues from his items and things that like talk about what a great knight that he was, and then all of a sudden you run into him and he is just like now this corrupted beast almost. It's a really cool arc.
Right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe at times I thought we were going to be like speaking to like specific mechanics of the fights, but I mean, it really seems like just that build up, that like world building, where they're at in this point of time, the boss, the villain, who you're going against. Seems like it's so much more important as far as like being a memorable experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's a really good point. It's, as the player, you have to feel like you care about the boss's motives and intentions, and even relate to them on a certain level. So when you're fighting them, like at the end, you don't just feel like victory because you defeated them and overcome the obstacle, but you also kind of feel a little bit of sadness because you did relate to what they were trying to do or what they went through. It's that like final climax of emotions that you're going through, like almost like the end of a movie or something.
Yeah, and without them, you can't grow. You wouldn't be able to reach the point that you were as that character without that opposing person pushing you and giving you a goal to, strive for.
It's like that moment in like the original trilogy of Star Wars, where like Luke tries to save Vader kind of thing, where he's kind of progressed through this journey, and I feel like this happens a lot in RPG games where they kind of look back and they can see where maybe like in their own story they could have like went down the wrong path, but like they had this example, they had this, they made the right choices, and they can kind of like look and see like, hey, like maybe there's like a reason for this, they can kind of sympathize at times. And then you as the player kind of watching both stories unfold can really sympathize with certain bosses, and obviously with like the protagonist that you've been following along this whole time. It's just a really neat experience when it's done really well. And I feel like we hit a few games that have done this really well.
Oh yeah. Final Fantasy VII, I mean, that's what Cloud is trying to stop Sephiroth, not to kill him because he despises him, but because he looked up to him and he admired him at one point, and he sees the good human aspects in him. He doesn't see the part that Sephiroth sees, which is, the god, the inhuman part of him,
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I love that when that build up is there, where you're in that situation where like it's inevitable that this guy has to go down, or the story is progressing that it is going to happen at some point. This guy's you're gonna have to kill him or stop him in some way. And just that, it's a gut-wrenching feeling when there's that there's the dialogue where it's like, please, just don't do this. Those kind of, and it's like that's when they really got you hooked in these stories, because it's tearing you, it's pulling you in two different directions. One party is like, well, you have to do this, and other part's like, just come back to the light side. Anakin.
I really wanted to touch on not just the coolest bosses and the most well-written bosses, which I think that we've done a great job of so far, but just like the iconic ones that you see throughout a lot of titles of the same franchise, like Bowser from Mario, or Ganon from Zelda, or Dr. Robotnik from Sonic.
Bowser's got to be the best.
I would argue that Bowser is, I mean, maybe just as famous as Mario.
Yeah.
And like the evolution of fighting Bowser is like crazy. Because like when you play like Super Mario or like regular Mario on like NES, like the first Mario game, you literally just like jump over his head and like knock down the drawbridge and he's dead. And then like it was like so easy. And then like it progressed to like more ridiculous as like games got more advanced.
Spinning him around whenever you grab his tail in Mario 64. It's very cool.
I think Bowser's the coolest, like how simple the boss fight, like when video games were like in their infancy, how like easy it was, and then like watching him evolve into like a more complicated and harder boss to fight as like video games like progressed and the new consoles and the new games came out.
What I liked about Bowser was they had developed this character who was physically very strong and intimidating, but not very smart, right? And I mean that's kind of translates into like bullies that we, what I mean, that we've met in our past, and that's like a theme. And when we're younger, you have the big guy who can beat you up, but he's dumb as sin, and you laugh at him behind his back, But that's what I always thought about with Bowser, and I think it's really true, that a lot of the lighthearted games you see that, a little bit more immature games, I'll say, you see those characters come out that are like, you just hate them because they're dumb and they're big idiots.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Robotnik's kind of the similar suit, right? Like, you think he's got doctor in front of his name, like he's got these great ideas, but like he's always coming with like the silly like robot things, and like none of it's ever working out.
His I think I've only played like maybe 2 Sonics, never beat them, never played them like a lot, but I always remember like every time he like flew in on his little copter thing, it was always had smoke and like screws like flying off it because he's always fucked up his inventions or whatever. Like,
well, by the end, I don't know if he was like a screw up or anything like that, but like he's always flying away like in disarray. Like,
okay,
like it's that.
I thought it was that he came. I thought it was like I thought he was coming into the fight like
no,
like
no.
unhinged. Like
no, he has his stuff together. He's not a doctor in name only.
Last question that I really had before we moved on to trending, and I thought it was a really cool one on whether or not you guys prefer to fight giant bosses or just human-sized bosses, like just a humanoid form. Just because, a boss battle has so much lead up all the time, which we've talked about, and a lot of the times a boss, and maybe not the main boss, but just like a side boss or something that you have to get through the main story will be like an absolute monster. But I think I prefer just fighting a human-sized boss. I think normally it takes more skill, or you can relate to it more. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
For me personally, from a story aspect, it's totally based off the story. If you have this big monolithic,
yeah, for sure.
But me personally, just my preference, I like human villains, or at least like they're human, like you said, they're human sized and they have human aspects and traits and whatnot, because then, like I got into earlier, you can relate to them, get a little bit more invested. When the giant bosses, it's kind of just like, fuck this shit up, like look at this nasty thing, you know what I mean? Like, of course, get it, I think there's more emotion involved with taking down a boss that has human aspects and a good story behind it.
Definitely. But I think I'm the opposite way, honestly. I think the giant bosses are like, I know something about like having when you have a good group, a party, or you're playing an MMO or something like that, and you're faced up against this absolutely larger than life, massive boss, these huge dragons, things like that. I don't know, just it's like that sense of like high fantasy adventure, things that obviously don't exist in the real world, that like you're out there fighting, and that I feel like that's what games are kind of about, right? Like that escape.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, just because like WoW, like kill it, you know what I mean? Like you have to band together with a bunch of other people to be able to defeat something, because you could never do it alone.
Exactly.
I like the team aspect of killing something, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's too strong to kill by yourself. You wouldn't be able to do it. So it's cool that you have to band together and like figure it out as a team on how to take this big bastard down. Plus, I kind of like
two for two.
Yep. Guess
we know
the everlasting battle.
Yeah.
I kind of like the big bosses too, that like you had to like hit their vulnerable spots,
Yeah,
like
I like that too.
They had like little like weaknesses in their armor or something. I always liked those. I thought those were interesting.
This was another question that I had on the outline. I actually just deleted it, but since you brought it up, I'm gonna ask it anyway. Yeah, how do you feel about sometimes like you'll go into a boss fight and they won't have a health bar, or at least not one that's very, very clear to see, and instead you'll just be doing damage and they'll be showing physical signs of getting weaker, whether that's like shredding armor, or maybe they're just starting to look injured, or they're changing their color or something, or maybe you're fighting like a fire boss and he's starting to like look like he's like gonna explode or something. How do you feel about fights without the health bars? I actually think that I prefer those as well, because they bring another aspect of not knowing when exactly you're going to finish, or when exactly the final blow is going to be dealt, so you have to play a little bit safer.
Yeah, I mean, this is just coming from a RPG mind.
Of course. That was implied.
But I like when either it's very subtle things in like the way they move, or like if we're going back to like more 2D RPGs, like a part of them will like fall off, or like their clothes will like get tattered or something. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I like that. Or they'll be more ragged, they'll be slowing down. And I also like when those changes happen, their fighting style changes. Like they'll start casting more spells, or like they'll be hitting harder, or they'll maybe get weaker, and then they'll get like a burst of power at the end or something. I really like that. It adds a different flow to the fight. And yeah.
I'm with you 100% on that. I feel the same way.
It's a pretty cool concept, right? Obviously, like if you were to get into a fight, like, you know, outside with a wolf, you know, it wouldn't have like a little like HP bar like sitting above its head. But I mean, do I need to? Yeah, do I need to have, you know, it be one way or the other? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's not something I probably put too much thought into in the past. You know, it's either one way or the other. It's fine, like from the MMORPG sense, like you got the health bar. You know, it's really cool when you see the percentages like in the health, like whittling down towards the end, like that the climactic finish, that kind of thing. So I guess both sides definitely do have an appeal to it.
Yeah, I think it depends on the game. Like a game like WoW, you kind of need to know like how close you are to killing it. But like a
and how
single
much
player
damage you're
game,
doing.
yeah, right. Like, cause I don't know, it's just kind of how like an RPG or something works. But then there's single player games where yeah, like you don't know you know what I mean. You don't know when he's gonna die exactly. So like you said, it makes you play safer. Like you know what I mean? Because sometimes like WoW, like okay, it's at 2%, you can just fucking just you know he's gonna die in 2%, so you can just like YOLO and just like burn it down and ignore mechanics. You know what I mean? Whereas in like the game where you don't know how much HP it has, you can't do that as much.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, it depends on the game, and but I was just thinking as you guys were explaining the MMO perspective there, wouldn't it be cool if the changes were real subtle and like the boss like slowed down, like he moves slower or something, but you know, and you had to pick up on those cues. Like I know we're used to the model where it's a health bar and everything, but that'd be cool to have a MMO where the bosses were more based off that. Then it'd be hard to manage, I suppose. Easier to for people not to notice, and when you're coordinating with 40 people
Yeah,
or
that's what I was
20
gonna say.
people,
It's already hard
or
enough to
even
get
10
40 people to do the
yeah,
same thing.
that you kind of need that visual of the HP bar, but it would be it'd be more challenging potentially.
It would definitely be more challenging. I don't know if it would add another layer. Well, it definitely, you know, I shouldn't say that. It definitely would add another
And maybe it's not a necessary layer.
gameplay. Right.
Yeah.
I like what Matt was saying.
Well, for
like,
my MMO, it is Ben's
Right.
World.
Like it changes your play style.
Ben's
It's just
World.
something like you got to keep in the back of your mind. Like that's really cool. Kind of keeps you more alert, like on your toes. Like
Yeah,
Dave
you're a
was
little
saying, kind of
you're a little more
relaxed,
invested,
last
right?
2%. Right.
Yeah. But okay, does anybody else have any other bosses they want to bring up before we jump down to trending? I don't know if we left any of your favorites off the list or anything, but I feel like we hit a pretty good amount there.
No, I could go on and on about RPG bosses.
We
don't want to bore the.
We got Luca Blight already, so.
Mm-hmm.
Die, pigs!
All right, jumping down to trending. So this one's pretty cool. Senator Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, is planning to introduce a bill to ban loot boxes and pay-to-win microtransactions from games. This is going to be called the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act. And this would target the exploitation of children through pay-to-win and loot box monetization practices by the video game industry. So I have a quote here from Senator Hawley. When a game is designed for kids, game developers shouldn't be allowed to monetize addiction. And when kids play games designed for adults, they should be walled off from compulsive microtransactions. Game developers who knowingly exploit children should face legal consequences. And then I also have a quote in a response statement from the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association. So they said, numerous countries, including Ireland, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, determined that loot boxes do not constitute gambling. We look forward to sharing with the Senator the tools and information the industry already provides that keeps the control of in-game spending in the parents' hands. Parents already have the ability to limit or prohibit in-game purchases with easy-to-use parental controls. It's worth noting I think that the Netherlands and Belgium have ruled that loot boxes do constitute illegal games of chance, and also that efforts in Washington State, Hawaii, and Indiana to rein in loot boxes have yet to make any real progress. So obviously this bill isn't even written yet. This is just like a proposal. I think that he just mentioned that he was going to be doing this, so it has a very, very long way to actually becoming law. But how do you guys feel about the proposal? Do you feel that loot boxes are in fact gambling, and if you do you feel that they're predatory, towards children?
They're definitely predatory towards children. I know for a fact that like the when it was first introduced, like in EA's hands with the specifically like the sports franchises, FIFA I think was huge on it, and Madden and NHL to like a lesser degree with the ultimate teams, and people pouring just insane amounts of money into virtual card packs online, where you're essentially just getting random stuff, varying levels that you could pay money into. Just insane amounts of money that they're making off of kids for stuff like that. I think it's irresponsible. I hate that it's a thing. I hope that they just do away with it. That response statement from the ESA.
Yeah.
Oh man, is that shitty. That's like the last thing I want to hear. Like they're gonna be like, well, parents need to be more responsible and things like that. Gambling is addictive. I mean, that's proven. Like you start like getting kids hooked on that early, and if parents of these kids are already hooked on that kind of thing from these kind of practices, it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. I'm in agreement for the most part. I think that, I think you should always put some emphasis on the parents, of course. But it's kind of hard nowadays, considering every device you can have these games, which have these these fucking crazy practices. I don't like it. I think in general, all of us have agreed that we don't like the new model. And I hope that we get away from it.
You mean the freemium? Yeah.
Loot boxes.
Yeah.
Pay to win, just in-game buying shit. I guess like the in-game buying shit is. I don't like it, but I can see how they can say. They'll leave it. The loot boxes, in my opinion, have to go. Like you said, it's a part of it's similar to gambling, and these kids, the thing that we have to come back to is they're kids, and they don't realize that before there was the gaming industry was a way which you bought something, you paid for it right off the bat, and then you had it, and it was there's no gambling about it. There's no giving money to increase the quality of the game or anything like that. Like they don't realize that. Like the only way that they see it is through the eyes of the new model, which is you have to pay for everything in the game, and you have to pay for these these in-game microtransaction mechanics that you pay for it, and then you have a chance to get something. It's like, fuck no, like it's wrong, and they need to do away with it. And children are always susceptible to these things. That we just have to accept that, and we have to, as a society and as companies that are making money, like you have to accept that and try to make it better, so you're not exploiting these young minds and literally changing how they're going to see things in different parts of their life. Like Wolf said, I mean, it's crazy to think about this, but I would guarantee if a kid was playing from a young age a game with loot boxes, continue to play throughout his childhood and into adult life, he would be more susceptible to gambling. I would guarantee it.
Probably
bad habits of gambling.
I'm chomping at the bit over here with a counterpoint.
Go.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah, get after it.
So for like me, I like okay, like preying on kids. I get that to some extent, but like it's not like kids have a fucking checking account with like millions of dollars in it, or like have a credit card. Like the parents are paying for it, and like as a parent, you have the responsibility to like watch what your kid does and like be a parent. So like I don't know. It's not.
Yeah,
I don't-
that's
yeah,
why
'cause I don't- I think
that's why I prefaced it with
yeah,
that.
it's
Was
just like
you
it's
know, we
just
always
like
have to put emphasis on the parents.
for me, it's like everything is like, oh, it's it's like it's not the person who's consuming it's fault, it's the person who's making it. It's like then don't fucking consume it. Or like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like you're capable of not doing it, don't do it. Like you're a parent. You can watch what your kid does and like, teach them that like you know what I mean? Like you have to understand that, yeah, sure, you can buy one of these every once in a while, but you can't just fucking spend all your money and you know what I mean? Like I I think I'm not saying like loot boxes are good or whatever. And for me personally, okay, so loot boxes that offer like skins and like cosmetic things that don't actually affect gameplay, I'm okay with that. That doesn't really bother me. But things that like you have to buy, like pay, like you actually need to pay to win, that I have a problem with.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think that's a pretty defensible position to come from. Um, I I I really don't like loot boxes. I mean, I think I mentioned this on another podcast, but in Heroes of the Storm, they have loot boxes, and it's like the only way to get the skin or the mount that you want. There
Yeah, right.
wasn't like a great way to actually buy or purchase a single item unless you had enough of these, this type of currency saved up, which you really could only get from loot boxes anyway. And like stuff like that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And just another point, when I was really thinking about this, after I typed this up, it seems to me that video games are addictive enough already for kids and just everybody in general, just because like they're way more fun than anything in real life. When you throw in like, even if it is just a small aspect of gambling or like that feeling of winning something when you have a small chance of getting it, I think it just really adds fuel to the fire.
Definitely. I agree with what Dave was saying too. I'm all for like responsible parenting, and obviously you need to keep track on what your kids are doing, but with your wallet, that kind of thing. But I'm kind of falling more into the camp now with, we obviously understand what's going on. Maybe we'll, have a better, better mechanisms of like combating, loot boxes, when our kids are like, hey, I want to buy this virtual currency on this game. I'm gonna be like, no, you're not buying virtual currency. It's stupid. But like our parents and, people a little younger than them probably really don't have any idea what they're actually spending their money on. It's just really hard for them to like comprehend, wrap their heads around it, unless you're, actually there doing it, partaking in it. And even though it's not the kids' money, they're still benefit. I don't want to say benefiting, but experiencing that euphoric feeling from gambling that you do get when winning things, stuff like that. The randomness of the loot box. I just don't. It doesn't need to be there. Like what Ben was saying.
I get that point for a kid, but like for me, like if I open a loot box and I don't get like the rush of gambling or like it's not
Right.
like when I open a
you've
loot
gambled
box,
in
it's not
real
bad.
life.
Yeah.
Real money.
Because we
Like,
gamble
I don't know,
pretty
when I
heavy
open-
normally, yeah.
When I open my loot box, I'm not like, oh my god, oh, I gotta buy more.
Yeah.
I'm
Could you imagine
telling
when
you,
you were a
a
kid, though?
young mind.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
to
no,
really
that
liking that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like yeah, a younger
chasing
mind.
that.
Pokemon loot boxes. Could you imagine if you could have bought like a loot box in Pokemon Blue or Red? You got like a random Pokemon.
Yeah, I
Like,
probably would have
you
stole my
do.
parents' credit card, bro. And
Oh yeah, you
Sign me up.
Yeah, why couldn't they, even if they wanted to do a loot box thing, why couldn't 4 prizes pop out? Rare, common, whatever, and then you could pick which one that you wanted. I mean, why does it have to be random?
yeah, or I think a big thing is too, like they just need to like tell you the odds of getting things. So if you open a loot box, you have like a 1 in 10 chance of getting this rarity of item, and you have
Right.
a 1 in 5 chance. You know what I mean? They have to at least give you some
More transparency.
give you a little bit of idea like how good of a chance do I have, or like kind of like how they did it in Hearthstone or whatever. Like after you know what I mean, in the first like 10 packs you open for a new expansion or whatever, you would get a legendary no matter what.
Yeah.
Like things like that where you're like, or like if you open 10 of them, you're gonna get a legendary. Like set parameters where at least you know at some point you are going to get something.
It's really the least they could fucking do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right.
the least. That's exactly. It's the least they could do. I think it should be gone. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. You know, like this is entertainment for us. If you want to, when you buy something, like you get a product. Like, I'm tired of this shit. You know, like,
Yeah.
I don't like it. It's what it is what it comes down to, and it's very simple. Is there's no benefits through these new models, loot boxes, pay to win, microtransactions. Well, that's pretty much mobile games. But you know, there is some other PC games and stuff. But you know, these new models, like there's no benefit really overall. Like you don't get a better story. You know, you don't like. What the hell are you getting out of this shit? Like it makes no sense to me. It's just it's kind of it's a little bit devious, sinister in my mind because they're just trying to figure out ways to make more money and take advantage of the
Well,
consumer.
yeah, that's 100% what it is. Like they do it because they make more money doing it, and people pay for it, so they're gonna keep doing it because they're making
Yeah.
more money. That's
Yeah.
literally the only motivation for it is money. There's no other motivation.
Yeah, so that's my whole thing is like let's when you're talking about these complicated things that they're like trying to pass laws for, you have to go to the origin point and you have to go to like motivate you have to like check the motivations of people, right? And they don't care, and like getting off the kid shit, you know, like that's one aspect of it. They don't care about the consumers in general when they do these kind of things.
Yeah.
So that's my big thing.
But like if people are gonna pay for it though, like nobody's forcing you to pay for it. That's like the
Right.
counter argument. You know, that just like anything in life, nobody's forcing you to do it. You're doing it on your own free will.
I gotcha.
Adults, go for it. Children,
Yeah.
you got to protect them.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you guys think, me personally, I don't think this bill has a shot in hell at passing.
I don't think it does.
There'll be
no.
so much pressure from every games company everywhere that will, you know, I'm sure
The money
do
will
something
make it
to-
all right, baby.
Yeah, do something to, you know, either grease the palms or, you know, do something legally that will just make this not pass. But do you guys feel that, you know, would you want something like this passed? Or would you rather just leave it up to like the free market and parenting and whatever else to?
You know, I never like more laws being passed. I wish that we could just like get to a moral consensus where like it's like let's get back to providing for, you know, and being true to the consumer rather than this industry's gotten so big that they're continuously not going down that route. I wish we could go back to that where it's just like moral consensus, this is bad, let's get it out of here. You know, but unlikely. That's why Senator Hawley's doing this.
Yeah, I don't want this act to pass. It's probably going to be, you know, not what we or he envisioned it to be, you know, when and if it ever did come to pass, it would probably be left with some kind of weird pseudo workaround from the gaming industry that to keep with these practices. It'd just be a total mess.
Yeah,
I would rather
might just get worse.
Yep, more
Right.
devious.
I want to see, like Ben was saying, like, you know, the gamers, the people, you know, that are actually partaking in this kind of thing, you know, kind of keep speaking out like they have been. So this isn't a practice we want to keep seeing in games.
Yeah, and like for me too, like okay, we're worried about like taking advantage of children and shit for loot boxes and pay to win, but like for me, there's like bigger issues of companies being devious and fucking you over, like cable companies or phone providers. Like let's fuck that shit up first before we worry about this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
there's
a lot of injustices.
like bigger fish to fry where people where they like legally can fuck you because it's like a monopoly. Like
Right,
I'd
yep.
rather see that being taken care of than
huge
something like this.
injustices. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I mean, I don't really care if it passes. I'd actually maybe just rather see it not pass. But for me, I don't mind spending money on a game. I just don't want the random chance involved. I like a League of Legends model where if I want to buy one of their cool skins that they make, just let me buy it with real money and be done with it. And the transaction's done. And then at the end of the day, like I'm the moron that just spent money on a digital skin. You know, it's not like a loot box or a gambling addiction. I'm just an idiot. You know, I'd rather just have it that way.
Yeah, and you get what you want.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no chance.
That's the point where it's like, okay, it's acceptable for me. Like, I don't want to see that, but it's like, okay, if we're gonna have to meet in the middle here, then that's where I would be at. Like, more transparency. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's where a lot. Well, last thing I wanted to say about where a lot of people take exception to it with like EA Sports in particular with the Ultimate Teams. Like, you can only buy the packs of cards. Like,
Yep.
you could be playing NHL and say like, well, I want Crosby on my Ultimate Team, and go buy Crosby for your team. You can't do that.
Yeah, and they would expire too. You can only use them for so many games.
Oh,
that
was
Ultimate
bad.
Team stuff was bad. I don't want to get into that. It was awful.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's a great point. It was really bad.
I'm not gonna sleep tonight.
Might be
night tears.
I'll be stirring in the night. Yeah. But let's jump down to the second story. So Apex Legends has released data that shows they have banned 770,000 cheaters since the game came out. Here's a quote for Respawn. I got quotes coming out of my ass today, I guess. While we can't share details on what we're doing so as to not give a heads up to the cheat makers, what we can say is that we're attacking this from every angle, from improvements to detecting cheaters, bolstering resources and tools, to improving processes and other sneaky things to combat sellers and cheaters. So me personally, like, I always knew that cheating was a problem, especially in online shooters. We've personally experienced it in games like PUBG, where it was super blatant and you can see a guy basically flying around the map just headshotting you instantly. And we've actually, I was thinking about it, we've probably come across it a lot more than that, but it's so hard to tell because we're so fucking bad that anybody just beats us no matter what, that we can't tell if they're cheating or not. But did you guys know that cheating was this big of a problem? And, you know, how do you feel about cheating and how do you stop it? And just a follow-up, or not even a follow-up, but more of like an overarching question. Do you think that this is a direct effect of players wanting to be big on Twitch? A lot of younger kids wanting to be big on Twitch, because I think if I was in that mindset, if I was maybe like 16, 17 years old playing, you know, Fortnite or Apex all day, if I could cheat in a way that maybe people couldn't tell and stream it to make it look like I was better than everybody else, it's probably worth the shot if I could, you know, potentially get a little bit of stardom down the road and make money.
Yeah, I know people have done that in the past. I think there's clips on YouTube, CSGO in particular, where I think there were like hacks and cheats that programs that you could run in the background and you couldn't really tell while you were streaming, and people get caught with them running, like accidentally like minimizing or expanding a window, that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely there's that demographic of people that, you know, want to be the next Shroud or Ninja or whatever in their video game, but the 770,000 other people,
it's a pretty big number.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta remember it's probably just people recreating, you know, multiple people recreating different accounts, obviously. But the main thing with
just there was also a number where they had actually stopped 400,000 other alt accounts from coming on. That is additional to that 770.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, first of all, Apex Legends sucks. Did you guys real quick? I just want to throw out, they're gonna go to mobile like PUBG did too. If you guys didn't know that,
I did see that. Yeah.
No, this doesn't surprise me. There's always cheaters. I always think of the cheater thing as like the main like motivation behind the cheaters and everything. And actually, I don't even think that it's known. It may just be like, they might not even be conscious of it. They just want to, like, you know, what is that goddamn saying? Take it to the man or whatever.
Stick it to the man.
Stick it to the man. Damn it. Jeez, I'm really bad with sayings.
That's all right. That's fine.
But yeah, they just want to stick it to the man. They want to, like, you know, they invest time. They put time into this game, and they want to be like, fuck you, man. I'm smarter than you. You know, like, let me get in your game and fuck it up. You know, like, that's like the mentality I feel like a lot of these cheaters have. You know, they just like, they're kind of like Kefka. They're mad, malevolent dudes. They're just like
drunk on power.
Yeah, going in there like, fuck yeah. I remember Rust. Rust had some really funny scenarios with cheating, because like the cheats that you could do in Rust, like you could still kill the cheater. So like when a cheater like is like going through walls and shit and killing you and stuff. I remember this one time, me and my brother and Phil and Justin were playing, and this dude like comes in, kills everybody in the house, flying through walls, like throwing grenades and stuff. And they're like, "Oh shit, like cheater!" Like they call me to get on. Like this point where like we're calling each other to get out in the game. Like, "Hey, get on, save the base." And they call me to get on. I'm like, "Well, what the fuck is a cheater? What am I gonna do?" And the guys like they're sitting there, they're talking to them, they're keeping them in the vicinity. And at this point, the dude is inside of our base, and I'm in a different part. I run outside. I nade the one door down and blast this dude down, like take him down. And he's like, fucking mother effing me. He's like, how'd you do that? Are you cheating too? So it's like, I love those games where you can kill the cheater, like in his like God mode. You know, it's like the most glorious thing. Like I remember that in Rust, you could still kill the cheaters. Really good feeling.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like a boss battle in itself.
Yeah, yeah, seriously.
But is cheating getting worse? I feel like, and maybe this is just me being naive, but I feel like maybe, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, maybe this wasn't this big of a problem.
I feel like there's always been cheating, especially like shooters. There's always cheaters in that. Even like WoW, like people botting, like
Yeah.
RuneScape, all those games. There's always people cheating in those things.
Mhm.
Diablo, duping items. I think
Farming.
it's always been around.
Yeah, I think
been-
of course there's
been a
always
big
been
problem in
cheaters.
a lot of
It's
games.
it's human nature. I think that it is. I mean, it only makes sense that as we get a larger and larger population of people playing video games, that there's going to be more cheaters out there, especially people who are maybe not very good because they don't have a history of playing video games. So they're like, oh well, fuck, you can cheat. Like, let's get with it. So.
That's probably exactly what they're saying.
Yeah,
Let's get with it.
It's just crazy. I hope they find a way to crack down on it, and I don't know, maybe deal with the problem. Just so, what do they have, like 50 million players they've had, and they're banning about 1 million. So what's that, like 2% of the player base? I don't know. That seems high to me, and I just hope it doesn't get to like 5% or something, because it would be so overblown that you couldn't even play. You can barely play the game now, but you really couldn't play something then.
Well, that's a good point you brought up. Like 2%, like maybe that doesn't sound like a lot, but a game where how many was there, like 30, 40, 50 people in there at one time?
60, yeah.
60. So I mean, odds are you're gonna.
Yeah, it's brutal.
You might get one.
You probably have a pretty good chance you're getting one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's.
I remember playing the game Apex Legends, and I it's really, I think that's a really hard game for other players to notice cheaters, because it's so fast paced. Things are happening so quickly. In other games, you can you're like, that's not normal. In this game, you're like, well, I don't know. I'm flying the fuck around and dashing and shit
like
too.
And like I said, like I'm just getting headshotted no matter where I am. So, I'm not gonna win a 1v1. I'm horrible. I have the slowest fingers out there,
Well,
but like I don't know.
For me, I think the biggest problem with like cheating is too, like the people that want to cheat are like always going to be one step ahead. You know what I mean? Like the defense against cheating, like people are always going to find new ways to break in. Like someone has to cheat before like people, like the developers and stuff, can figure out how they're cheating so they can stop it. So like there's always like the offense, the cheater is always going to be on the attack.
Yeah, that's a great
they're
point.
they're always going to have a leg up.
Yeah,
so it's really hard to like take care of that.
Yeah,
issue.
Your defense has to be reactionary. That's a great point.
Yeah,
you know what
I mean? You can never completely protect something until somebody exploits a vulnerability. Right, exactly. So like that kind of sucks, because you'll never be able to like totally eliminate anything.
Yeah. One thing that I was just thinking of that's really funny, and I think it's got to be common with a lot of people who play a lot of video games now, and have a group, like a close knit group of friends who play. I always love it's a cheater. Like, we're getting our asses beat.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Don't you always love that
must
aspect?
be cheating, yeah.
Yeah, especially like some of our other friends who like are really, pretty good and have a lot of hours in the game, like that's one of their big ones. Like, I got to be a cheater, like like it's just like no questions asked.
Yeah,
like,
it's a little bit like RNG. It gives you that out just to say that you're not actually bad. Like it's the game or the cheater that's fucking you over.
I love that.
That's hilarious.
Man. And I find myself doing. I mean, I think we all do it, but I'll like do it. I'll be like, yeah, fucking cheater, right? It would like pop in my head, and I'm like, you're a dumbass. Like, you suck in the game.
Let's jump down to this third story. It's a pretty interesting one. I just saw this today. There's a brand new report that came out from a company called Newzoo that shows that female gamers make up 46% of the total gaming market, putting their total number at over 1 billion gamers. Upon first glance, this number seemed really, really high to me. Mainly because my experience meeting people online and like talking to people over voice comms and things, just in any game that I'm playing, everybody's like almost generally male. And maybe that's just because it's the games that I'm playing or something, but that's been my experience. So just like looking further into this data, what Newzoo has done in the reporting is it's lumping together anyone who games even just a little tiny bit as a, quote unquote gamer. So, someone who PC games every single night for hours on end and on the weekends spends tons of money on hardware, is lumped into the same category as somebody who just plays, Candy Crush for 5 minutes a day to pass the time. And what's interesting is that in this data, 36% of all of the women fell into this time waster category, which is how they had classed it, as well as 19% of the men, which are pretty big numbers for the data as like gamers. That's a lot of people that are just playing, mobile games here and there. But like putting the gender differences aside, that's not even what I want to talk about. It's just what made me look at the article more. Me personally, I feel that the industry needs to find a way to label and categorize gamers more accurately by lumping them into buckets or separating them out some way. Like, I feel that a PC gamer is much different than a passive mobile gamer. Like, the experience of playing Dark Souls on PC is a little bit different than playing Candy Crush. Or playing, even if you're playing like something like Clash Royale 5-10 minutes a day, it's just not the same experience, and it's not the same type of person or the same type of person that you'd be marketing to. They're two different customers, very different customers. I don't know. How do you guys feel about like this lumping together of gamers as a whole? Like, do you feel like it's okay to just lump everybody into one, or do you feel like these stats should be different and that it really doesn't even help to look at stuff like this because it's so just incorrect?
I think, from my perspective, I will say that I've seen a lot of these lately, the data on gamers. I think that there's a lot of money to be made, and I think a lot of these statistics and these reports that people throw together is mainly just they want to make it, it's part of what we're talking about a lot. They want to make it social. So, people who are thinking like, oh, who don't play video games that see that article, they'll be like, oh shit, there's that many people who play the game. Oh shit, there's people who only play 20 minutes a day and they're considered a gamer. Like, why don't I try that out? So I think like a lot of these articles are like trying to get like social acceptance, like saying, look at these variety of different gamers. Right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things with these, this research that's done is the main motivation behind it is like acceptance on a social and cultural scale. I will say that, getting to what you're talking about, Matt, do we need to distinguish? Is it appropriate to distinguish? I think that it is not super important to distinguish, but it's necessary because it's it's a diverse group of people, and in every other situation, we want to put emphasis on people's individual, how they do things, correct? If it's race or whatever, like we want to respect them for that, but like when it comes to this, we just want to lump everybody together and say, oh, they're a gamer. Well, I mean, that's that's kind of silly because it's a little bit more complicated than that. Like, and that's what I think you're trying to get to here is like.
Well, yeah, I really just wanted to have a conversation about it. Well, I think first of all, it seemed a little bit dishonest to me, and it rubbed me the wrong way a little bit because I feel like I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they're just like trying to show that, like, bump up the numbers of gamers and show other people that all these people are gaming. So why not try it out? I think that you were like really spot on, but I think maybe I'm just biased, like, because I do play games a lot, that, you know, maybe I'm like coming at this from a negative way and saying like, oh, well, like, you know, you're not like a real gamer, you know, if you don't do like this, and this. And I don't want to come across that way, but I'm sure that there's some kind of bias that I'm showing even just bringing this up. But I have like a little analogy here where, like, you know, for two gym goers, a guy that lifts heavy weights every day in the gym, you know, for years on end, and then somebody that goes and walks on the treadmill for 10 minutes a day, like, you wouldn't lump them into the same category. They aren't like both like fitness enthusiasts or like bodybuilders. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're different. It's a different category. I'm sure you could make comparisons like that all day to different hobbies. And
really good one, man. That right. It's there. You have to think of who these, like you said. It's these studies are done in order to make it acceptable and try to get more people into an industry where they're going to spend their money. But I think for people who are already residing there, it's important to not be gatekeepers and say you're not allowed to be called a gamer, but to say like, hey, like, you know, I put a lot of time and money and et cetera into this, and like, you're just sitting there on your phone that you already have, like, you know, that's why people up about this. And then there's now that we're all on Twitter, the gatekeeper thing.
Right.
It's like, people are not always trying to be gatekeepers. People are just touchy about it because they put fucking half of their life sometimes into video games. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Give them a little bit of a break. And at the same time, like, if someone is giving someone grief for not being a gamer, like, they're in the bad too. It works both ways. Like, this thing, it's more nuanced than people want to accept.
Yeah, it's that, I don't know. Like you said, they're kind of like playing both sides of that scenario. Just whenever it's fitting for them. Like, certain things you want to like praise people's individuality, and then others, it's like, no, you're all part of the same group. Like, you just can't. You never find like the middle ground here, because obviously, if it were up to me, like this time waster category, I think if you ask them too, I don't think that they would consider themselves gamers. You know, I think that's not something that people that are probably in that category to begin with want to associate with anyways, at least in, you know, the US. That was another thing that kind of, obviously, I think these are probably you know, international, like for the world,
for sure,
like demographic.
Oh yeah.
What was that, over 1 billion? So what? Yeah, that's a ridiculous number of people, of women gamers.
Yeah, over 1 billion female. Yeah,
right. Not a chance. But you know, you were saying that, like, you know, not in our experience, like, there's not X percent of girls playing games, like they're non-existent. But yeah, maybe that isn't always the truth in other places. Maybe it's more accepted in Europe and Asia and things like that. Those are huge markets. And here, you know, in the US, we do kind of get that stigma of, you know, that when people label you a gamer, like, you know, especially over like the last 10 years, like, they think of this generally negative connotation, like you're this kind of shut in, and you don't interact with anybody, you don't do anything, you're just wasting your life, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, you're like Quasimodo down in the basement.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
which is semi-true, but I mean, we're having fun, right?
Yes, exactly. It is kind of true in a way, but it's the image is amplified by like 1 million by people who are on the other end of it, you know. But what I wanted to say was, now I can't remember, for Christ's sakes.
Oh no,
it's coming back. I've been good lately, guys.
Baby brain strikes again.
It was bound to happen. Well, I mean, I don't really have like a point that I'm trying to drive home with this, or really anything. I really just wanted to talk about it because it just irked me a little bit that they want to like lump in, you know, this time waster category as
Well, okay, now I remember.
As this gamer thing, and is it a big deal? No, I mean it's not. But me personally, like I just feel like if you're gonna like market to like a gamer or like try to write about something like what you're talking about, like this just seems like you're super off base to me.
It's not honest. It's not made by someone who's actually whoever came up with the categories and everything. They're not being honest about what a gamer really is. I mean, there's now I remember what I was gonna say. I did a little bit of research on this when you sent me the article,
okay,
Matt, and they have categories where people are just watching video games.
Oh yeah, the popcorn enthusiasts or something, like, they call them. Yeah,
I do like that a lot. I might be one of those.
You
we got one.
Yeah, dude.
We have one.
I mean, you're
us,
not.
bro.
It's logical that you're not actively playing. What would they call someone who watches NBA? Would they say, "Oh no, he's the dude watching. He's a basketball player."
Well, that's a really good point, actually.
I've seen him slam a couple down. He's got a good three-pointer.
Yeah, like when I watch Gordon Ramsay on TV, it doesn't make me a fucking chef.
Yeah, like Matt. Next time I go up and I visit at home, Matt's got like a chef hat. He's like, "Hey man, I would."
I'm cooking my scrambled eggs with creme fraiche. Anyway, let's get to this last short one.
Oh,
here.
Dave, did you have anything you wanted to say about this?
Yes.
I feel like you wanted. I feel say about this.
I don't know. It just doesn't seem that. I just don't really fucking care.
No, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it's not a big deal. It isn't, but
I just don't really fucking care. I enjoyed listening to you guys yap about it.
That's good at least. Let's jump down to the last one. So let's touch on the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer. It was just released. Personally, I think we may differ here, some of us, but I think it looks fantastic. But this is coming from somebody who never even got past disc 2 of the original because I got lost, like moving the ship around the water for like days and couldn't find where to go, and I eventually stopped. But so I guess take it with a grain of salt. But so the remake was first announced and shown at E3 2015. That's when the hype beast was born, and it's going to involve episodic releases. I don't think we have a number yet, but I think people are saying 3 just because the original one had 3 discs. But, what do you guys think about the trailer? Are you hyped for the game to come out at all?
What do you think, Ben?
What do I think? I'm not really. I'm going to seem like the old guy, the old man, hermit man in the cave with Cain beating young.
That's good.
Gullible kids. Smacking them around.
Yeah.
Get out of here, leave me alone.
Like EA.
But no, really, they're gonna fuck this up. I think. I know it's pessimistic. I literally in every other aspect of my life, I try to be optimistic and think of it. It just it seems like they just fuck shit up. Everyone they fuck it up.
Well, what do you think, Adam? Before I get into what Ben said.
So, I don't know if we want to get into starting to like dissect the trailer a little bit, but I definitely had some issues with it.
Okay.
Even just with the game in general, I hate that it's going to be episodic. I think that's really a disservice to the story that people remember, is really going to ruin the impact of it for people. I mean, even like yourself, Matt, if you're going to play the new one and you didn't play through the entire story, it's definitely not going to hit you the same way as if you have to wait, 9 months in between the next release to the next one. Who knows? It could be years between games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure how that's going to work out well. But
I'll be lost in the water for that whole time, so I could use.
We'll buy you the strategy guide too.
Thanks.
The trailer itself, I mean, it looks great. I like the voice acting and stuff. They're finally putting voices to some of these characters that. Granted, they had that FF7 Advent Children movie that kind of slapped some voices on people, and that was pretty decent watch at the time. But my biggest issue with it was everyone is just like way too good looking. Like Jesse and Biggs are like they're like models.
Sounds great to me.
See that? Well, she like they're like part of like a terrorist group. I'm thinking they maybe just be like a little rough around the edges, but like she's like a model. She's like waving, like, "Hey, see you around," and like Biggs is like the best looking dude in the world. He's like, "Hey, boss, like, what are we doing next?" And
Perfect.
and,
Like, I gotta go. I got a model shoot after this. Let's
Right.
hurry up.
Where can I
yeah,
buy?
it's like Mr. T and Team Sexy. Like they're not Avalanche anymore. It's ridiculous. It's just not what I envisioned when
I'm glad that you
when
brought
I
that
see
up,
these
Wolf,
guys.
because that is very true, and I didn't think about it when I saw it. I kind of got cringy the whole time I saw it. Sorry, I'm gonna come back to it if you want to go for what you were going on.
Me?
Wolf.
Oh no, what were we saying, Ben?
Well, the whole thing with me is it's not necessarily, it's just where Square Enix has gone in general with these games, with the series. I think that, and it's okay that these things happen because there's different people writing the stories. There's different people working on the new battle systems and all the new tropes to the new game. So of course it's not going to be exactly like how I want it to be with just like a brand new, what I want personally, and what I think a lot of people want, is a lot of people who are true fans of Final Fantasy. They want these fucking games remade, no differences to the story, upgraded graphics, upgrade the music quality, and fucking release the game and rack in the cash. But this is what's happening with Square Enix and Final Fantasy. They are trying to appeal to new generations of gamers. And the turn-based battle system and the other tropes of the older games, they don't interface with younger generations instant gratification minds. They need that stimulation. They always need things to be fast paced. There's not like the sit down and like really think about like which materia or like I'm sure they still have equipment in the newer installments of these series, but everything just was more detailed. There was more planning, and for me, like I like that more. And I think that these remakes in the future, I think they should really reconsider just updating the graphics, getting the music upgraded, keep the stories the same, keep everything the same, and yes, I think they're racking money. But it doesn't. They're thinking in the future, and they want to get. It's all about it's a business. They want to lure in other younger generation of people, and here's the main thing: the people who are fanboys. I see it all on Twitter. Like the people who are fanboys and who really love the originals, they're still gonna love these new ones because they're riding that all you have to do is just put Final Fantasy on it, and it's fucking. They're gonna get it no matter what. The true fanboys, myself included.
As long as they paint my boy Biggs in a nice light, that's really all I care about. No, that's a shame to hear because, like, as someone who's not an avid fan of the game, like I said, like it looks awesome to me, and I kind of hate that I'm saying that because, like, for someone who does care about it, they may not be as excited. And like now that we're going through this last season of Game of Thrones, as someone who like is a big fan of the story of the books and just how well written and produced the show has been up to this point, now like I'm really disappointed in the show, and I see a lot of people that have no idea like what the show is actually about or anything, and they fucking love the last season, and I'm sitting there like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about, like this stinks. They ruined all these arcs, and I feel like I'm doing the same thing to you guys from the outside here, but
yeah. No. It's such a weird thing to see these stories that we love and that we get passionate about develop, and then to see the degradation of it, and like for instance, I don't want to stay on Game of Thrones for too long, but like to watch from like season 5 to I stopped watching after season or episode 2 of 8, just to watch that. Each episode I was cringing. I was looking away from the I was explaining, looking away from the TV.
Shooting
I was,
your eyes.
I was explaining to people like, no, this isn't it. You know what I mean? And people were looking at me. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is awesome. I'm like, no, you just don't understand.
I mean, there's just always going to be that, and in any like super large fan base, it's always going to happen.
Yeah, and I want people to enjoy what they want to enjoy, but at the same time, when you're there from the onset, and a lot of what times is when the degradation begins is when it's a transfer of ideas and thoughts to another person, you know, and then at first they're able to carry it on, I think, for a period of time, and they do it well, but then as they continue past a certain point, it just devolves.
Right.
I think
I mean,
that's
there's
fair.
so many iconic scenes in Seven that obviously they played that up a lot in the trailer, like, you know, Eris with the flower and stuff, like obviously they're gonna have those, but with you know the new style of the game being, you know, obviously with the updated graphics and everything, they're gonna have to flesh out like the animations and what people are saying with the voice acting. They're gonna have to add stuff, and I just can't see myself being really happy with like the extra things they're adding. Granted, like me and Ben, you know, we both love Final Fantasy VII. I mean, is it? I think we can both agree it's, you know, it's not the best. It's not even the best Final Fantasy game. You know, we're not going to sit here and say that to people, but you know, it's just going to be a shame to see how they, unfortunately, ultimately probably turn this into something that wasn't like we remembered, and maybe just isn't very good, because their track record in the past few years here has been pretty poor.
And I'm gonna, you know, call me bipolar. Let's put positive energy towards this, man. I hope it's good. I hope that I hope that I don't think it will be, but let's, maybe if we throw enough positive energy out into the ether there, I'm doing it right now. That it might turn out good. I doubt it.
Yeah, by 2025 we'll be able to play the whole thing, and it'll be great.
Yeah, sounds awesome, guys. I'm excited. I'm excited for you. But all right, let's wrap up episode 16. Thank you very much for coming on. That was a lot of fun. And thank you very much for listening as well. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, and we're all on Twitter. And mainly check us out on YouTube. It's where we put the podcast, as well as a lot of our other works, like reviews and gameplay of different games that we're going through. So thanks again, and hope you'll join us next week.